The International Federation for Theatre Research was set up back in 1957 to forge links between theatre researchers around the world. And it started off mainly with researchers in Eastern and Western Europe. So it was a child of the Cold War, if you like. But from then it spread right around the world. And today we have members from 30, 40 countries. We have over 1,000 members now. We meet in different countries around the world on all continents except Antarctic. And our basic aim is to foster theatre research in a broader sense of the word. So it's not just dramatic theatre, it's dance, it's opera, it's performance in that sense as well. So yeah, we're a very broad-based organisation, both in terms of membership and in terms of what we research.
An IFTR conference is actually 3 conferences at the same time. We have a conference with a theme that we as conference organizers decide, and this year's conference is Rerouting Performance Recaminant l'Escena. The theme of the conference is the section that we call General Panels, but we also have 2 other sections of the conference. One of them promotes new scholars, so we have the New Scholars Forum, which is a session specifically devoted for people who are doing research at a germinal state and chaired by reputed scholars who are going to give advice, methodological advice, thematic advice. It's basically what's going to be the future of scholarship within IFTR. But IFTR is also a place for specific themes to be developed. So it has 22 working groups that work on themes so different as feminist research, or Asian theater, African Caribbean theater, Beckett's, or even practice as research, choreography and corporeality. There are 22 working groups. Working groups do have their own space. They have their own, let's say, mini conferences, which are linked to IFTR conference at large. In a full week, beginning with an opening ceremony that's going to give us all some context on the theme of the conference, is going to give also some ideas of what are the important elements at stake for the Federation, for the International Federation for Theatre Research, and eventually also starting with the keynote speakers. Keynote speakers are chosen by conference organizers, and the reason why we choose some particular keynote speaker or another is precisely to feed the theme of the conference. This particular year, we tried to find people who had a career in the idea of roots and routing and rerouting, but also some local scholar that could give some important, interesting advice and opinion about what it means theater and performance in the local context. We got Patrice Paddy, who gave the inaugural keynote speech lecture, and we also got Joan Matabosc, the Liceu Opera House artistic director, talking about the rerouting of opera today. You got Margaret Wherry, who is an expert on traveling performance, tourist performance, and for this particular year, focusing on the performance of the dead. Anne Maria Delgado, who is a very well-known scholar in the UK, talking about memory and the roots of memory in Spanish Civil War and Spanish performance.
The great thing about this conference in terms of its research agenda is the topic, I think, rerouting performance, which highlights one of the really new and important paradigms, not just in theatre research, in cultural research, I think in general, and that's the whole idea of mobility. I mean, we tend to think of theatre as something very static. It sort of takes place in buildings made of concrete or stone. But I think we're now seeing more and more that theatre is something which is always on the move, yeah, which reconstitutes itself anew, and it's something which is essentially mobile. And I think this has been a very, very productive question to engage with in this conference, and it's happened really, I think, in many, many levels.
The topic, the theme of the conference has opened up new areas in terms of connections, trying to make connections between ideas. So the whole idea of rerouting or of routes is a connection between two different locations, two different places. And what we've done then with that notion is to find new ways of connecting ideas or methodologies or practice and research or even themes. And also I think that the idea of rerouting enables us not only to rethink old routes, but to actually create completely new routes between ideas and themes and even areas that we hadn't even imagined.
I think there's been a lot of papers about space, I think, and about what space means in a digital age. I think there's been a lot of questions asked about the role of the archives, and not just intellectual questions about, you know, what archives mean and how they function theoretically, but also about how they're managed and how they operate and what software systems they use. And I think that's really important in expanding the parameters of what constitutes theatre studies. And I think we're seeing a real breadth in terms of areas of theatre studies, from memory to forensic archaeology to the display of objects, the curation of objects, the idea of props and scenery. And it seems to me that our understandings of theatre studies and intersections with performance studies and scenography, I think they are expanding, and this conference has played a role in that.
I think these rerouting themes, in this conference it has been very practical, in the sense there are a lot of theory, of course, but mainly I think the focus was in how to apply this theory into the practice, into the daily theatrical life, and also not only on the stages, but also in the city, in all society, because it's a very difficult time for, especially for our country. And I think that it's an international claim in that sense. This a current interest that you can follow in all the communications. And for me this is very important because it's a precise link between theory and practice. And I think it's very related with our nature, the nature of the Institut del Teatre.
I think we are somehow at a crossroads at the moment, because people are getting more and more involved in globalization, working in difficult conditions, and so it becomes something which people are thinking about, and it has consequences also for each individual research, like cognitivism, type of productions you're making, type of theatre you want to do. So I think we are really at the beginning of a new rethinking.
IFTR is a place for scholarship, but it's a place also for the mingling of people who are actually scholars. It is important to us to find some spaces where people can actually interact. The farewell party and dinner is one of these spaces where, after giving our lectures, giving our papers, we can actually talk to ourselves, to each other, and maybe find alliances that in the future are going to be probably a new book, a new project, a new collaboration.
This conference has opened the possibility, a lot of interchanges, a lot of new relationships between institutions, between professors, between students. I think it will open a lot of trade relations and also publishing relations in the sense of exchanges of publications, but also the possibility of doing joint publications and also the changes between professor and why not between students, the possibility of to do joint master programs or PhD programs. I think it's an open door that allows us to interchange, to participate with a lot of partners around the world.
As conference organizers, we do have to follow the structure of a typical IFTR conference, but we also have room for a little bit of innovation and improvisation, if you wish. This innovation, in our case, came with the idea of open mic. We wanted to give a chance to local artists and students to mix and mingle with the scholars that came from abroad, even though these local artists and students may not have been part of the conference itself. So what we created is this space for some very impromptu performances held inside and outside of Institut. We actually used two venues, Teatre Studi, which is an indoor venue, and the atrium of Institut, which is an outdoor venue with a little stage where people would actually get to show any kind of performance they wanted to. And we had international scholars or artists joining in the open mic presentations, as well as students and local artists from Barcelona.
I think it's a really interesting experiment. I think that I was really pleased that it was done here. I don't know if future organizers will want to do it. I think that that's what we should do with conferences, is every time have the local organizers give their particular flavor. Since this is an institute with just an amazing amount of training, I mean, I've seen your actors perform and they're just marvelous. I think that by having open mic, Capsula Scanner, and some of the other activities is a way to showcase that and also showcase the other talents of our membership. So I think they're great innovations.
I think one of the particularities of this conference, it has been Capsula Scanner, our special forum about practice as research. And it was a big opportunity in order to know personally, to hear, and the possibility to ask Alex Oller and Carles Pedrissa from La Fura dels Baus. They are our most international artists.
Institut del Teatre has, for several years now, developed what we call scanner events. And for this, in this particular conference today, we created Capsula Scanner. Capsula Scanner was a short contained event looking at Catalan scholarship. In this particular case, looking at Carles Pedrissa and Alex Oller, La Fura dels Baus creations in opera. So by trying to look at local performance for this international audience of the International Federation for Theatre Research, Capsula Scanner inserts its own interests in the local scholarship. But the conference is also a place where many, many things happen. There are not only scholarly presentations and innovations that we have, it's also a place to present many of the new scholarship that happens. So we do have areas where publishers can display their books, where scholars can look at the new publications and very often get them at a discounted price. And we also offer the chance for what we call book launches. So you could have a book published by IFTR, and we gave room and time for people who were publishing these books or just published these books to display them and share them with their colleagues. It is a complex venture. An IFTR conference is a scholarly venture, but it's also a moment for sharing your work. It's also a moment for socializing.
Una vez nos concedieron la posibilidad de realizarla en Barcelona en el 2013, coincidiendo con nuestro aniversario, la idea fue distinta, fue de cruzar muchas más cosas con la misma conferencia para que ella tuviera otra riqueza diferente y que a la vez el participante no se quedara centrado única y exclusivamente en la conferencia, sino que dentro del ámbito del arte o de las artes escénicas pudiera disfrutar a la vez, crecer y intersectar diferentes disciplinas, y que todo esto sucediera en un ámbito mucho más cercano a las artes escénicas, ya que esto era una escuela de artes escénicas, no era una universidad, ¿no? Hemos integrado el MENAC, hemos integrado el Teatre Lliure, hemos integrado el Mercat de las Flors, y luego todas las personas responsables de estos centros dentro de estos ámbitos también han participado, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que esto le ha dado una riqueza importante.
Institut is located in a place that holds the teaching institution, Institut del Teatre, but it also has two big venues, Mercat de les Flors, which is the dance and movement theater of Barcelona, and Teatre Lliure, which is a public-funded theater which is known by its avant-garde history. So Ciutat del Teatre, the city of theater, holds one of the publicly funded venues for theater, the public funded venue for movement and dance theater, and also the teaching institution for theater in Barcelona. It is a chance for us to show to the world some of the important elements that are now here, part of our work and part of our environment.
I think coming to Barcelona this year has built on a lot of those initiatives last year. I think it's very important because it's the 100th anniversary of the Institut del Teatre. The Institut del Teatre has been a major training house for artists in the Spanish-speaking world. It's always been a place of currency with a lot of practitioners and scholars coming from Latin America to study here. It's been a central site for theatrical exchange and training in Spain and of course in Catalonia. And so a lot of the artists, a lot of the practitioners that the conference participants and delegates have been able to see over this past week have been trained here, form part of its history. I think it's also been really important in showing the international delegates about the kind of work that happens here, is generated here in Barcelona. And people may well have known about La Fura dels Baus, perhaps seen a comediant's piece, but they may not know so much about the new generation of practitioners, or indeed directors' theatre, or indeed the kind of gestural work that they saw and work about acting that they saw in the Oriol Brogis, or be aware of the Grec's role within Barcelona's theatre ecology in the summer. So I think it's been really important for a whole series of reasons, and also for an understanding of how Catalonia works as a bilingual nation within a wider state. And I think for me those bilingual policies of people talking in Catalan and in Castilian, Spanish, have been evidenced throughout the week.
Barcelona sits at a very important place within Mediterranean, within Europe, and also a contested place within language. And I think it's really important to have the FIRT conferences in places that speak to many different issues. And of course the particular theme that developed about roots and routes and origins and destinations, and I think that was also something that spoke very well to all of us in the Federation. And of course it did, I never imagined for 1 minute that so many people would want to come. Obviously I knew a lot of people would want to come to Barcelona, but this took us all completely by surprise. So it is the biggest and the most popular of all the FIRT conferences for over 50 years.
Coming to Barcelona and being able to have the conference here at the Institut del Teatre has been quite a remarkable experience, I think, for all participants. We've never ever seen anything like this before. I mean, an institute of this size devoted to training theatre and researching theatre on this scale is almost unique in the world. I don't think there's any other place like it, and so it's been a really fantastic place to have this conference.
In my role as treasurer, I think it's very important that we came to Barcelona for a number of reasons. First of all, Barcelona was able to attract many people. So now we have over 1,000 members of IFTR, and we have over 800 participants at the conference this year in Barcelona. And that has enabled IFTR as an organization to have an incredible financial health. And that financial health will permit us to start new initiatives that will benefit the membership.
We were lucky enough to have a good partnership with the Museum of National Art and Culture in Catalonia, and we had the main venue of the museum being actually the host of the party. Our conference participants had the chance to have a beautiful, wonderful welcome drink, looking towards the magic fountain down Barcelona with its beautiful scenic views. Just to get time to go inside of the museum, we also opened two of the most important rooms in the museum, the Romanesque and the Gothic areas, which hold some of the most important collections of Romanesque art in the world. And then finally enter the space where they would have leisure with their food and a little bit of dance too.
este antes y después, ¿no? Esta innovación yo creo que debería de integrarse a partir de ahora en todos los certámenes, ¿no? Intentando que no sea solo un encuentro interuniversitario, sino que fuera mucho más allá, ¿no? Y que se integrara en la ciudad y dentro de la ciudad en el teatro, en las escuelas, en las universidades, en el mundo, en el tejido de artes escénicas del territorio donde esto va a producirse en el futuro, para que realmente fluya de una manera que sea enriquecedora para todos.
The main reason for the success of such a conference is not just that there are good scholarly papers, it's that there are good people behind it helping organize it. All this would not have been possible unless we had a wonderful team of volunteers as we do. We've got almost 50 volunteers, students from the school, former students from the school, collaborators that selflessly gave their time to help with the conference and make this an incredible experience.
For us, rerouting performance is also a rerouting thinking about us. I mean the present and the future of the Institut del Teatre.
FIRT IFTR 2013, it is a before and after moment for Institut del Teatre and for scholarship. We really think that this space for thinking, this space for collaboration is some lasting experience for what we need to do in the future.